Hi, everyone. I'd like you to welcome Peck from Impeccable. He's a guy, just a normal guy, who has his own design firm, though, in Silicon Valley. However, comes from the same roots as us, all the way from UIC, from computer engineering, except his talk's actually going to be about how design took him to where he wanted to be and everything he's developed. And regardless of, though, he does not brag about himself at all and is super humble, his accomplishments are more than many. So please join me in welcoming Peck.
Thank you. Thank you for coming here on this afternoon. And thank you, HackIllinois, for sponsoring and bringing me here. And I originally was going to talk about design because we're primarily a design studio. And then I thought, well, what could, if I had to talk to like a younger version of myself, what would really benefit me? And I could talk about design, I could talk about mobile development, but I've been on this entrepreneurship journey for a long time, and I feel like I've hit every wrong tree, a wrong branch on the way down, and just like, let's save you guys, even if I can save you a day of frustration, this talk will have been worth it, but hopefully it'll save you years of frustration. So my name is Pongpaet. I'm originally from Thailand. And my career, I graduated as an engineer, and then halfway through my career, I found that very unfulfilling, and I found that I really got more out of being a designer or really being front and center of a product. And that's where I had the most impact, like the user experience, how the product worked, how people interacted with it. I saw that that was where the value is. When people really had an affinity towards the product, it's not really how it worked on the back end, but it was really how the product felt, the way they interacted. And then in the latest chapter of my life, I'm a small business owner. I own a digital studio in Silicon Valley, and I can talk to you a little bit about that. What I really see myself is I'm at heart a craftsman. I like to make products. So we'll take a quick journey, history of like some of the stuff I've done, and some of this is like super old. Back when Twitter first came out and they had an API, I built like a hot or not for Twitter. And basically, rather than judging people on their tweets, you judge people on their Twitter profiles. And this was an email I got from one of our users. Then I realized I was onto something. This is a legit email. I actually, down the line, I started participating in hackathons a lot. I built a hackathon project called ShelfLuv, and it was a very easy way to navigate Amazon to search for the right books. At the time, I was like a really book nerd. I read a lot of books, and I wanted to be able to quickly find the right books I wanted. I can talk more about that. I built an Instagram, Pinterest mashup a while ago, and we can talk about that too. Lately, my latest project, one of my latest projects is a movie app. You can download it. It's called Marquee, and it's a showcase of not only my design, but our team's technological accomplishments with iOS and Android. And in the latest journey, somehow I ended up on the cover of the Chicago Tribune. I became like the poster boy of like people who leave Chicago, the tech, and then like people got angry because like all this talent draining from Chicago to the Silicon Valley. So somehow I kind of became the poster boy of that. And here's a little bit of info about our company. So it's we're 3 years old now. We're 25 people, spanning 6 countries. We've done over 170 projects with 80 clients, and 10 of them were our Fortune 500 clients. So these are some of our kind of more impressive clients, and I'm really proud of my team. So we get into the talk. Take this with a grain of salt. A lot of this will not necessarily apply. Just like any advice, it can sound pithy, but this is kind of what applied to me, and then what I could have, if I had this advice, it would have been really helpful. Don't just wait. Do it. Do it now. A lot of people, who I talk to, they come and they talk and they're like, well, if I could get funding, I could do this, or like if I can find the right co-founder, I'd do this. You know, if I wait for the right conditions, I do this. The timing, you know, like the timing's not right. I don't have the right person. I don't have the right team. I've been through all that, and you know, what's worked for me is just forget about that and just make some progress. You know, go ahead and build something. Go ahead and push towards. If you have an idea, push towards that idea. Don't keep just like having it as an idea, looking for a co-founder, because an idea by itself, unless it's kind of realized into a product, that's all it is. So don't wait. If you have something, you know, and if you've been searching for 6 months for a co-founder to partner up, you've waited too long. In 6 months, you could probably had something. So that's one takeaway. Another thing is it doesn't hurt to ask. So the worst that can happen is they'll just say no, and then you're no better off than where you were. Great example in recent events is like Kanye, who somehow is, you know, despite all his wealth, is bankrupt, and like he's begging Mark Zuckerberg for money here on the internet, on Twitter. So that was a great example. But hey, it doesn't hurt to ask, right? Except you get retweeted and get shamed. Another piece of advice is getting outside of your comfort zone. I am a huge introvert, so like if you asked me to do this talk 15 years ago, it would have been really difficult. You know, being in public, speaking in public. You know, my business has taken me to, you know, I'm now a salesperson. I don't have sales training. I don't have marketing training. You know, I'm an engineer by training. I picked up design by myself. So, like, running a small business, hiring people, firing people, recruiting, talking to CEOs of billion-dollar companies, those are all like, whoa, way outside my comfort zone. But the one thing that got me through this is, well, if I don't make this happen, we don't eat, we don't get the business, we don't pay our bills. So there was a real need to really get outside my comfort zone. But the sooner you can play outside your comfort zone, you know, once you can get over, talking to a stranger, you know, talking to a potential client, you know, or hey, if you don't see yourself as a marketer, but you know, you have to do it because otherwise, how else are people going to find out about your business? All these things, you know, will really help you succeed. Read a lot. I can't stress this enough. Your journey, a lot of people, you know, they finish school and then they're done, you know. They do their job and, you know, they have a very healthy extracurricular activity outside of life, you know, well balanced, but they don't read and they don't educate themselves because people get in the mindset of, okay, I'm done with school, I don't need to read anymore. But that's the way you move forward. For me, I started reading other books outside of design and engineering because I didn't have those skills. I didn't go to school for that. So I really needed, nowadays I spend a lot of time reading business books and people more successful than me to really understand what they went through. And another valuable advice is, you know, it's okay to fail, and you will fail over and over and over. But it's good to think of it as, you know, failure is not really failure. It's just part of the learning process. And if you think of it that, oh, you haven't really failed, you just tried something and it didn't work. That's all it is. It was an experiment. So the idea is if you can fail quickly and cheaply enough, then it doesn't matter so much. And just to illustrate, like, my career is like, it's paved with dead apps, of the corpses of like dead projects over and over. This is one of them. I made an iPad app at a hackathon. We, you know, didn't really go anywhere. It's beautiful. Made a Twitter social media analytics platform when Twitter and Facebook and social media in general were starting out. Didn't go anywhere. Kind of went bust. Did another project, this ShelfLuv thing, at a hackathon, and got to a few hundred users, a few thousand users. Also didn't go anywhere. I shut it down eventually. Made a quotes app for the iOS App Store because I loved quotes. You can see a recurring theme, lots of quotes here. Didn't go anywhere, didn't get a lot of users, maybe like 300 users a month or something. This thing kind of got popular. We had hundreds of thousands of users, but it wasn't a financial success or anything. And then lastly, Marquee, our latest project, also not a commercial success in any way. It's beautiful, it's a showcase of our work, but yeah, definitely not, I wouldn't say a success. But what's happened is, like with the Twitter Hot or Not, that got the attention of some marketing folks from the Cheech and Chong camp, and we ended up building one of the first Twitter social games for Cheech and Chong. So even though Hot Tweeters was a failure, at least it caught the attention, and we were able to build something for a brand. The iPad app I made for the hackathon ended up being featured in Engadget on an article about skeuomorphism. So skeuomorphism is a design philosophy where the look and feel of something is kind of mirrored in the app. And basically our app ended up being the showcase for what skeuomorphism was about. Like one day I just got an email from one of my friends like, hey, your app's on the front page of Engadget. I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. And the failure that was the Twitter analytics platform, I built that and tried to sell that to a bunch of companies in Chicago. It didn't go anywhere. But there was a company, a new startup, that was looking for a founding team to build a social media platform for small business. So when they were looking to build that team, my name came up because I was one of the few guys here who early on built a social media analytics platform. I'm like, okay, that's the guy to build our product. So I ended up becoming VP of product and did that for a little bit. And Pinstagram, the little mashup, ended up a couple of years later after I built it, ended up on Time Magazine's Best 50 Websites of 2013. So that was kind of cool. Although it never really made any money, people did use it. And last but not least, Marquee, although not a commercial success, ended up also getting featured on Time like 2 days after it came out. So yeah, so all these things, although they're not successes, the way I look at it, it's these little stepping stones to your journey to success. You kind of level up just a little bit, just a little bit. You may not hit that home run, get a hockey stick right away, but you're kind of getting up there. So yeah, those are some accolades there. If you've ever used the Yahoo Weather app, Marquee is kind of my version of what a movie app would be if it was made by that team. Another point is figure out your shtick. What's that? Well, in this day and age, you can be a good coder, you can be a good designer, you can be a good whatever, but you're in a sea of other good designers, good coders, good salespeople, good whatever. I found out early on, so a little history about me is, does anyone know who this guy is? Raise your hand. You don't count. Anyone? Who's that? Raiden. Awesome. Raiden's the god of thunder. So my little interesting bit about myself is I did the mocap for Raiden, and a bunch of other games, a bunch of other characters in Mortal Kombat. Actually, 6 Mortal Kombat games for 10 years, and that's my shtick. I'll talk, and they're like, wah, 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 wah. And then Mortal Kombat, everybody just, for whatever reason, just remembers me as the Mortal Kombat dude. So that's kind of my shtick. People know me for that. And so sometimes I just lead with that because that's the interesting thing that people latch onto. They don't care about my company. They don't care about, they get a kick out of that guy's in Mortal Kombat. So that's your shtick. Another piece of advice, share your work. So I'm sure you're all great coders, great programmers, you're at this hackathon, but if you don't share your work, how will anybody know about it? So, as a point, if you make something, you want to share it and get people to use it. That's good for many things. But the advice, whether it's to get feedback so you can improve, for customers, you put it out there so they can pay for the service, share your work. And if anything, it's just resume building, right? This is a little harder, but if you can start doing it, you can start publishing. Anybody these days can write a blog. You can start a WordPress blog, a Medium blog, start sharing your experience, sharing your projects on your own publishing platform. Even better if you can share it on something that has a lot of distribution, so people can recognize. So start guest writing, start sharing your knowledge, and that's getting the word out there, because you want to build a great reputation in this business, in any business. Your reputation is everything. So the sooner you can start building that, just like your credit, the better it is. Another thing that served me well is piggybacking on hot trends. So what do I mean by that? So when I created ShelfLuv back in the day, there was this thing called, Google had just launched instant search. And what that was, you kind of take it for granted, is when you start typing, it auto-completes your search. It starts auto-suggesting your search. Well, that wasn't there before. But the moment they launched that, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wish I could have that on Amazon so that I could search for my books faster. So that's what I did for the hackathon project, was build an instant search and then people wrote about this because back then it was the hot thing to do, was like the Google instant search was hot. So this was kind of piggybacking on that. Same idea, just different product. Instagram also was piggybacking on not one, but two trends. Back then, Instagram was really hot. It was valued at like $1 billion. It just sold like 4 days before this. Instagram sold to Facebook for $1 billion. Pinterest was valued at like 500 million. So the joke was, well, if I put these two together, it's got to be 1.5 billion, right? So it didn't go that much. But what was interesting is like people wrote about it like crazy. And it wasn't because it was Pinstagram. There's nothing unique about it, but like people were jumping on the bandwagon of Instagram and Pinterest, and they wanted to write more about that. And we just happened to be the thing that was a combination of both. So we got featured. Like I remember we were getting calls that people wanted to fly us out to like talk to us on the news in the morning and stuff. I'm like, that's just too much work. But we were happy to get the online press. Yeah, so that's what companies were writing about, and we just happened kind of to be on the periphery. Another hot trend we jumped on when we became impeccable is the Apple Watch stuff. So if you've ever designed, you might have come across these GUI design kits, GUI, graphical user interface design kits, design templates. These get you a leg up on designing instead of designing from scratch. Well, there's this really good digital agency up in Canada who are always putting out mobile app design kits. And every time I would design something, I'd just download it, and it was by this agency, and I would get so frustrated. I'm like, why am I downloading this agency's design kit? Why don't we have our own? Because everybody was doing it, and everybody was being bombarded with this agency's branding. So I said, okay, well, when the Apple Watch was first announced, nobody had a design kit. What we did was we painstakingly looked at we recreated the screens just based on the announcements on the video. So we didn't even have, like, the Apple website hadn't even launched the Apple Watch screens, but, what we gleaned from the video, we kind of recreated this, and we were the first ones to launch an Apple Watch design kit. so that when people, when the Apple Watch came out, people who wanted to design for it could download. And then even now, if you search for like Apple Watch GUI Photoshop stuff, we're the #1 search. So jumping on that was valuable. We also put together a quick demo video of what it would be like, as a design company, what would be, what a Starbucks concept app for Apple Watch would look like. And this was before anything ever even came out, and that got us some press too. So jumping on trends, really good stuff. And then take this, another piece of advice, networking. But I really hate the word networking. It has so many negative connotations. All it really is making new friends. Just make new friends. Don't call it networking. All you're doing is trying to get to know each other, get to know one another, learn more about the person. Make friends with potential clients. So, if you have a product or service, who are your typical customers? Go ahead and make friends with them. Where do they hang out? Make friends with them. No hard sell, just make friends. Make friends with connectors. So these are people who just, for whatever reason, with their sheer personality or success, they just know a lot of people. Everybody knows at least one person who just seems to know everyone. One of my friends, Harper, he's that guy. He knows everyone. He's introduced so many people to me. He was, one of his claim to fame, well, he was the CTO of Threadless, a startup in Chicago, but ultimately he got really famous because he became the CTO for Obama for America, running his, the analytics, the data science team that helped Obama get elected. And then he started a new company and it got acquired by PayPal. But the important thing is, he's a connector. So, make friends with those people because they know a lot of people. Even if they can't help you, most likely they know someone. Or someone that you can help even better. Make friends with the press. You want to be an entrepreneur and nobody knows about your product, it's going to suck. So start making friends with the press. What happened with, I got to know Alex Wilhelm. He later became writer at TechCrunch, and now he's at Mattermark. But he started out, covering hackathons in Chicago for NextWeb, and I did the ShelfLuv, product at a hackathon in Chicago, and he covered that. So we kind of became friends after that, and that's a useful connection to have. Even though he hasn't really, after that, he hasn't really written anything for me, but it really helps. If you think about it, the press gets tons of requests. I'll send my app stuff to an app guy, and they'll say, you know what, I get 800 emails a day, right? So if you get 800 apps to cover a day, most likely the ones that can rise, even have a chance of rising to the top, are the ones that hey, I know this guy, right? And that's how it helps. I mean, at the end of the day, you still have to have a good product. Make friends with successful entrepreneurs. I thought this picture was funny because these are cut out. They're not. But yeah, make friends with successful people. Because why make the mistakes all over again? Learn from them, right? As opposed to doing it yourself and making all your mistakes all over again. They've been through it, so they can help you. So now that you've made friends, make sure you talk to them. Talk to customers, talk to users. So my role, we talked about how I became an engineer, now a designer. I barely design now. I would say I don't even do 5% of my time, maybe. But a lot of my time is just spent visiting our customers, making sure the service and products that we're providing are meeting their needs, anticipating what they might need, talking to them, trying to understand their problems, their challenges, how to make them look good, how to make them winners in their organization. So I spend a lot of time talking to customers. When you have a company, you have teams, you have to talk to your team. That's because you're not an individual anymore. Your success as a company depends on your team. You're relying on, you have their back, they have your back, and you want to make sure that you're meeting their needs, that you're addressing their concerns. So I spend a lot of time, when I'm not talking to customers, I try to have meetings with my, each team member. I might take a person out to lunch every now and then, a different person, and just to say, hey, so what's going on with you? What are you unhappy with anything? What can we do better? And then they'll tell me. But if you don't do that, people, and you just keep running your company focusing on maybe the customer, the product, and you're in this tunnel vision, you could end up losing a few really good people because there's a disconnect that could have been really solved if you just had a talk and conversation with them. Talk to people who've done it before, whatever it is you're trying to do. So when I had the idea we have a digital agency. We build a lot of enterprise stuff, kind of like high-end custom enterprise stuff. But we started a new side company to do casual mobile games. Well, I don't know the first thing about mobile games or mobile gaming. I know a lot about apps, but I don't know anything about mobile games, how to get the word out, how distribution works, what success looks like, what I should be thinking about. So I started talking to people and like, hey, who do I know, or who are people that my friends know in the mobile gaming space that are successful, and just in the last couple of weeks, I ended up talking to Aurora Berg, who she was one of the co-founders of Fun Run, which was downloaded 75 million times. Roger Dickey, we created Mafia Wars during the Facebook app times, sold that to Zynga. Basically I told them what I'm trying to do and get their advice, and they kind of tell me, well, you should think about this, you should think about that. This is how you think about getting users, this is how you think about your product, your game. So Josh actually been a long-time friend because he's also involved in the Mortal Kombat video games. That's how he got his start, but in the last probably 10 years, he's built all the Tony Hawk games for the bigger companies. So he knows a thing or two about mobile gaming and games in general. If you're thinking of building a company, building a team, you need lots of superpowers. My first company, we kind of struggled for 3 years. It was 2 other buddies who were both engineers, so there were 3 engineers. We didn't know product, we didn't know design, we couldn't market, we couldn't sell. It was just 3 engineers who knew how to code. And that's worked for some people, but I would say that's, you're attributing that a lot to luck. In retrospect, what would have been a stronger team is a guy who could code, who could build it, a guy who could design the product and create a good user experience, and somebody who could sell or market, one or the other, or both. So that would have been, a stronger foundation to a team rather than having 3 of the same type of people. So you want a diverse type of set of people, and the superpower part is they have to be really good at it. One thing, and again, this doesn't necessarily apply, may or may not apply to the individual, because I think a lot depends on your circumstances, your personality, and a bunch of things. But for me, early on, if you saw kind of all the stuff I built, is all consumer products. Like the quoting app, Pinstagram, like ShelfLuv, all these are consumer apps. And consumer apps, although I could get to hundreds of users, thousands of users, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, it was really hard to make money. And as I got, where I found success was building stuff for enterprises. And I found that it's way easier, say if just for simple math, if you want to get $1 million, it's much easier to convince 10 people to give you $100K to solve a really big problem for them than it is to convince 1 million people to just even part with their dollar. A friend of mine who's a young person who just graduated and starting to become a mobile developer, and he's building an app, like a calendaring to-do list app, and he has the foresight of doing a survey, right? Like, here's a free app I'm making and trying to solve your problem, to-dos and calendaring. So he did a survey and interviewed a bunch of people, like, hey, what do you feel like if I charge for this? And overwhelmingly, like, hey, it's a free app right now. It's like, well, what would you say if I started charging for this? And overwhelmingly, the response was like, along the lines of burn in hell, I'm not going to ever pay for this. So people who are used to free have like this huge friction of like paying even $1 or anything, right? But people who have serious business problems, right? Like if you can help a company save $500,000, they'll pay you $100,000. It's not a big deal. So think about that, and you'll save a lot of years of frustration trying to build consumer products that nobody wants to pay for. And one of the things that happen now is once you're profitable, or once you break even, once you have enough money, like, you have infinite runway. You can risk a little, you can invest. A lot of times, people start companies where, they leverage themselves, they start companies with their own credit card, they start companies borrowing money from people, whether it's angel investors, friends and family, venture capital. There's nothing wrong with that. The issue is, depending on how much you raise, the issue is the same. You have a limited time, because if you don't figure out how to make money by then, you run out of money and they close shop. Or if they don't feel like you're the right guy to get to where they want you to get to, you get replaced. So getting to profitability or break even, the moment that we're break even, we, as our company grows, like, we have a healthy profit, and we can invest in, let's try mobile gaming. Let's try, we're building something with drones right now. Let's try building an e-commerce add-on that'll help e-commerce online stores get more customers. So like, we're trying all these things because now, and we don't have to sweat it because we have healthy profits. If we were trying to do any of those, on a credit card or, borrowed money, I think the pressure would be even much more intense, and, life is already hard. And then once you get to, like, for the first few years of my business, I was like, being an engineer, being a designer, you're not an accountant, right? So my whole thing with my business was, as long as cash coming in was greater than cash coming out, we were doing okay. Not very sophisticated. And then as years went by, we put in metrics, we put in KPIs, I had analytics about my customers and numbers and stuff. And then I could tell that, for example, four of my customers brought in 66% of our revenue. Like our top 4 customers bringing, so this is like the 80-20 rule, right? Like 20% of your customers bring in 80% of revenue, roughly speaking. The same could be applied to, like, hey, the 20% of your customers probably create 80% of your headache. So if you want to apply that rule, like, I try to apply that rule in everything. So, like, guess what? Those customers, I kind of try to phase them away. I kind of try to help them less and less so that they kind of go away, because they're causing most of my headaches, unless they're part of the cohort that brings in the revenue. But yeah, so in everything, you'll kind of see this pattern over and over where, a small group is, increasingly bringing more value or less value, whatever it is in the extreme. So you want to kind of run your business or run your life by that way, right? Like, if, get rid of the bottom 20% who are like dragging their feet. We've had to, once you start hiring people and having a business, every once in a while, I hope it doesn't happen to you, you hire some freeloaders who look good on resume, and then they don't really add value to the company. In fact, they're trying to take it down. So the 80-20 rule, you have to get rid of them, the bottom 20%. So look to apply that as you get more sophisticated. And, lastly, be open to new opportunities. And I think for the longest time I resisted. I think in my mind I wanted to build a successful consumer product, consumer application. And I was not open to, hey, I could build a really good business building stuff for enterprises and charging lots of money. I just was not open to that idea. I just thought in my mind I could picture myself as, building something that millions of people used. And that was like success to me. But at the same time, like people were like, hey, you build great stuff. Can you just, here's some money and, build something for us? And I'm like, no. But finally, I think, bills and the reality of life kind of like, okay, fine, I'll take your money and I'll build your stuff. And now we're looking at new opportunities. We're looking, the very exciting part about our new venture, casual mobile games. We played around with this new tool set, which allows us to like really quickly crank out games like in a matter of weeks, as opposed to, like maybe a couple years ago, this would have taken months or years. So now we're in this new chapter of exploring new opportunity in mobile games as well. So be open to that. And with that, I'd like to end it. And don't be a stranger. Keep in touch. And open it up to questions. Yes, sir.
Can you recommend 5 books?
Can I recommend 5 books? Founders at Work is a great one. That was like, if I had to like take one book to an island, it's Founders at Work. Let's see. Richard Branson stuff. Any book about Richard Branson. Cornelius Vanderbilt, kind of like the old tycoons. Learn anything about the old tycoons, whether it's like J.P. Morgan, Carnegie, like all these guys. Amazing businesses back then. The Steve Jobs biography. I just read the Elon Musk one. Those are pretty good. That's 4. What was the Innovator's Dilemma? That's a good one. Huh? Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So when you're picking like your partners, what do you look for? Like which do you look for in these people?
So the question is, if I'm picking my partners, what do I look for? Let's see. Well, complementary skill. So like I'm good at certain things, but a successful business requires so many things, right? It requires ability to build the product, ability to build something that's easy to use and that has product market fit. Has to have great marketing, or being, if it's an enterprise play or a sales play, it's got to be a great salesperson. It's a good track record. And then, are we on the same page as far as where we want to take our vision? If somebody wants to take the company, to a 500-person consulting company, and we have these conversations now where, I have a pretty good team, and then bigger companies are coming, and they're like, well, we'd love to have your team, and we want to keep growing this consulting company. Well, for me, I never want to be an Accenture or like a Deloitte or whatever, and that may be their vision. So like having the same kind of, gel in terms of where you want to take the company. Culture fit, like can you stand in a startup environment, or if you're starting a company or a team, you'll probably spend more time with them than your partner, or your significant other. So can you stand to be with them for long periods of time? Like they may be good and they're bringing in the sales, but if you like really hate that guy's guts, it's like, man, that's going to be tough. So, if you can't respect each other, that's a tough one too. What's your question?
talk about money on your products and how challenging it's been for you to make money. And some products didn't take off, but everyone knows that if you get 100,000 users on your product, ads will pay for it all. Could you talk a little bit about how that is either a myth or a reality, or what that world is? Because that's not exactly the most transparent.
Yeah. The question is, if you get users, can ads pay for consumers? To a certain extent, but these days, I mean, more and more, there's just so many mobile properties, there's so many digital properties, ads are worth less and less. You really have to have a lot of users. Like even when we had like 300,000 users and I talked to investors about one of our products, and they're like, well, come back to us when you hit 1 million. Well, it turns out 1 million users is really hard. Some companies make it look really easy, but for the 99%, I think even getting to 1 million and then sustaining that, you may even get 1 million, but it could be a burst because you did something really cool, and then it's no longer cool, and then that burst kind of didn't stay. So I think the more healthy approach. There's also the other thing with business, those types of business, is your user is not your customer, and there's a problem with that, right? Like now you have two different bosses you're trying to appease, right? You're building a free consumer product that consumers use for free, and there's a certain user experience around that, but that's got to pay for it somehow. So you have this other party that pays you money to get access to those users, and they want certain things. They want certain concessions. And that ultimately will also impact how the experience of the consumers perceive the product or interact with the product. So now you have this weird relationship where I'm trying to be good to the consumers, I'm trying to fight for the user, but then at the same time I got to feed myself, so I got to take some money from advertisers, and advertisers want front and center placement of their ads, and then that kind of destroys the user experience. You kind of play that game, whereas kind of in the enterprise world or the prosumer world, if you can solve a problem for a small business, and hey, you can save me, like FreshBooks. We used FreshBooks for the longest time. Before FreshBooks, I would create invoices manually. It'd take me 15 minutes to create an invoice. I mean, it's not a lot, but if you create 20 invoices a month, that ends up being a lot of time. Well, then I found something like FreshBooks that let me create invoices in 2-3 clicks, and then within a minute, I could fire off an invoice, and yeah, that's worth $15 a month for me. Yeah. One more question, and then I think my time. Yes, ma'am.
I think a couple slides back, you had an article that was called User Experience for Developers. Is there another counterpart to the article? Because, you already know a lot about user experience and you want to learn the business.
Development for user experience?
Yeah.
As professionals? I'm sure you could find it. No, but I haven't written that, but I could. Yeah. I'm sorry, what's the question?
You already know a lot about user experience and design thinking. How would you get into the development?
So the question is, if you already know a lot about user experience design, how do you get into development? In this day and age, you guys are fortunate that there's so many resources online now. There's stuff like Lynda, Udemy, Khan Academy, Smashing Magazine. You could learn a lot of stuff, kind of self-teach some of this coding stuff. And then there's also boot camps and stuff that you can learn that, in our generation just wasn't available. All right. I think I have to go. I'm getting booted out. But thank you. Feel free to come talk to me afterwards. That's what that's for. I'm here for the whole weekend, and then that's my contact. So, yep.